Hello and welcome to Busy Works Beats. I'm gonna need you guys to smash that like button. Today I'm gonna break down mixing into 5 simple steps. So for underground and modern beats, they mix their songs a little bit more aggressively. So consider this a mixing and mastering. The first stage is gain staging. This is where we turn stuff up into the processing or turn it back down. This is a variable because you can mix and go back and then push harder into a mix or pull back from the mix. So it just depends. This is a variable. It's not the first stage, but it will be first in the chain. Secondly is the saturation stage. This is where we add frequencies to the mix and we make the mix more full because we're literally adding frequencies that didn't exist in the mix before. Nextly, we're shaping the transients. This is where when you add frequencies, it usually squares off a sound and it loses its curvature. So we're adding the curvature back to the sound to allow the listener to feel. And then we add the width and the height dimensionality using different techniques I'll show you guys today. And then lastly, we focus on loudness. So what I use for gain staging is a simple EQ. Lifestyle did it, showed us this. So let's go to, where's the presets? Let's replace this with Fruity Parametric EQ2. On the far left side, there's a fader. I never noticed this before. Lifestyle did it, showed us this years ago. And if you turn it up and down, it turns the gain up into the chain, or we can turn the gain down. So it's a simple way to measure how much energy I want going into the chain. So we're gonna leave it here. We're not gonna do anything for this part. We're gonna come back to this. And the next stage is saturation. There's different forms of saturation. So I'm gonna show you guys the various ways we do for underground at least. There's Fruity Wave Shaper. This is one form of saturation. Even Fruity Soft Clipper is technically a form of saturation. So there's no one right thing to do. It's just what are you doing with this portion of this process, and it's adding frequency. So let me show you guys a couple ways. So firstly is the Fruity Limiter. It has a saturation knob. Most people don't notice. If you turn the ceiling up, turn the saturation to the left, this adds saturation. The only issue is that it squares off the sound and makes it more flat. As you guys can hear, you can barely hear the saturation. So for saturation, you have to gain stage into it. So we're going to go back to the gain stage and turn this fader all the way up, not all the way up, but turn it up on the left side. That's what I meant to say. Until you can start to hear that punch of that tape saturation or whatever saturation style that is. So you're not going to hear it at this level. So now I can feel it. Okay, so that's what you want to do, is feel the music at this point in time. So that's one form of saturation. Another form of saturation is Fruity Wave Shaper. We can right click these nodes and change out the curve types. I keep mine on single curve 3. Also keep it on 16 times oversampling, or else you're adding aliasing to your track. Okay, that is not meant to be there, meaning we're adding frequencies that shouldn't even be in the mix. So here we have this on 16 times. We're going to turn this curvature to more convex curvature. And then we're going to turn down the post level because it's just going to be loud. And this is where we add that subtle edge that separates an underground beat from trap. And then you can blend in the mix level here. Another thing we could do is bipolar mode and do asymmetrical distortion by, there's like 2 sides. There's the top right quadrant and the bottom left quadrant. And then we can make these shapes different. So it creates more of a trashier sound, I'll say. We can always pull back the pre-level so it doesn't go into the plugin as heavily, and then mess the post level. So I think that's a sweet spot for that track. So I like that style. Let's A/B the saturation before. And remember, we have to push into it. I like what it does to the dynamics, but I'm not sure I like the tone of it. So let's see if we can combine the Fruity Wave Shaper with the saturation. It might be overkill. Actually sounds pretty dope. Now it's a little harsh, a little aggressive, so let's pull back on the saturation and Fruity Limiter. So again, you have to find the sweet spot of how much saturation you're going for in your specific track. Every track is completely different, especially for underground. Sometimes you got to experiment with different amounts of volume going in. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is shape transients. So here I use Fruity Limiter again. We're going to turn up the ceiling here so it prevents compression. And we're going to go to the compressor tab, pull the threshold to the left, turn the ratio to the left. This creates what's called expansion. So instead of turning down the volume, it will pull up the volume. And we're going to turn the sustain up to remove any jitter here. And just look for the peak of the transient. It should just poke up and turn down. If your thing looks like a flat line, it's not going to create the effect we're going for. So just find the threshold to where it goes up and comes down. Now we're adding curvature to stuff that lost its curvature. And now we can feel the music. It's the head bob effect. And then again, we can turn stages of saturation off. So it's a cleaner tone here. But we lose that thing. Okay. So now we're going to mess with width and height. Now this is dependent on the genre, because in underground we can even use something as simple as the Fruity Stereo Shaper. Now this is deemed wrong by traditional mixing, but you can add stereo delay. Now some people like that sound, but they just don't want it on their bass. So what I would do in this case is apply it to the instruments themselves. So we have a harmony, we have a bass. Let's just figure out which element we don't want it on first. I think I just don't want it on the bass. So in this case for the bass, we're going to add this to each group of sounds. So here I have my sound separated into groups: the top line, the bass, the harmony, and the drums. And that's just a practice you guys can find with mixing. Not that you have to do it every single song, but for this demonstration, I have to separate these. So let's separate the harmony. I feel like the bass could use this effect. Now the bass gets louder because now it has more room and no competition on the side, so we could turn it down. So we're adding width and perception of width. Now again, that's one technique. It's not the technique. It's just one way to make your stuff sound wider, especially for underground. Another way to add width is this is gonna get granular, so this is, beware, warning, geek language soon. We're gonna add what's called patcher. And in patcher, we have to basically set up a chain to where we can separate the mid signal from the side signal. This is not done by default in FL, so we have to create this chain. What we have to do is add what's called the Fruity Stereo Shaper. So we're going to right click a dot here, insert a plugin, and find the Fruity Stereo Shaper. In the Stereo Shaper, there's a preset. If you double click here and then left click here, go to mixing, go to mid A side splitter. And now this number down here 2 is the audio output for the side, or the difference between the left and the right. So long story short, just right click, go to audio, and we're going to select the output audio, send to. So now we have the output. The main output is the mono, and send number 2, the difference between the left and the right, is sent to channel 2. So anything on this wire is the stereo. Anything on, or I should say the side, anything on this wire is the mono. So if I add an EQ, for example, like Fruity Parametric EQ, where we at Fruity Parametric EQ 2, and then right click and just save this again and drag it here. So I'm going to name these so you guys can understand the concept. Here's the side EQ, and here is the mid EQ. Now I don't recommend you guys do mid side all the time. This is only when you want to do this specific technique, and you don't even need the mid EQ. It's just here to show you guys visuals. So we're going to send the side to the side EQ and then out. So again, how it works is you right click the first node, add a plugin, insert plugin, add the Fruity Stereo Shaper. Click here in the presets, go to mixing, and then go down to where it says mid A side splitter. And channel 2 will be your side information, which is what we're trying to target. The main output would be the mono. So we're going to separate. Here's the mid signal up here. With the mid EQ, here's the side EQ and the side information. So what does this mean? If I click in the mid EQ, I will see everything in the mid EQ because I have the monitoring on mid. So I think there's a setting. If you click this drop down and go to monitor input, it will show you the mid information. If you go to this EQ, double click, you won't see anything because by default it's set to mid. So we have to click here, go to monitor input, and go to side. Now we can see the side information. So if I right click and mute this channel, we hear the side, the width of the track. So this is what creates the perception of width and dimension, width. Okay, so now let's go to the side EQ and just turn up the volume. Now, usually it's below 6 dB. I can't tell you guys numbers because it depends on the track. Now, if you're using an extreme effect like what we did with the Fruity Stereo Shaper, it's already going to be wide, so there's not much to pull up. So let me turn that off for now. And now let's do this technique. So here's a track that just needs a little more fullness on the left and the right ear. So the side is the difference between the left and the right ear, and it creates the perception of width. I'm going to turn it up. So we can turn this up just a little bit. Here's without the patcher. It's very subtle for this track. Here's with it. Now for this track, already sound design the sounds exactly how I wanted them, but that's just something you guys can do to widen your specific tracks. For this track, I think it's a little overkill when we pair it with the Fruity Stereo Shaper technique. So I'm not going to apply it on this specific channel. So I'm just letting you guys know when to apply stuff and when not to. Let's see what it sounds like anyway. Just adds a little more attention to the side. It doesn't kill the mix. But what it does, however, is take away from the perception of dynamic. So we'll A/B that and see if it works for this mix. Next, let's add a parametric EQ2. We're going to add height. So to add height, we're going to boost frequencies from about 8K and above. High frequencies, for some reason, when you play them over speakers, they just sound higher. I don't know what it is, but that's just how it is. You gotta be careful because in FL Studio, you could boost really heavily and not know it. Not that there's rules to boosting, but in the top left, just read that value. So we're boosting 3 dB. So increasing those high frequencies adds an openness to your track. And lastly, we have loudness. Now, loudness comes in many different forms, from soft clipping to saturation to just limiting. So we're going to combine all these different ways in this last step. So keep in mind, there's more than one way to do this. We're going to first start off with a soft clipper, and then we're going to turn the threshold to the right. Most people leave it as is, but it actually changes the sound. What we're going to do is just turn it to the right for now for hard clipping. And to get loudness out of this, what we need to do is boost into the soft clipper. Okay, so let's add an EQ2. And now we're getting that loudness because we're pushing the gain into the soft clipper. Now let's see what it sounds like with the patcher on the side EQ. It just adds a little more fullness to the track. That small little EQ on the side. We boosted, what, 2 dB on the side. So what I did to rid some of the information on the side is I pulled the bass out of the stereo shaper so it's not eating up the side image as much. So let's hear it before and after. Here's before the chain. Now it's a good beat, it just needs to be polished up for that extra underground feel. So here's what the chain so far. So this track is already loud enough, but if you wanted to go extra loud, you can add another soft clipper or a limiter. I'm just going to use a soft clipper in this case. We just need something to catch stuff going past 0. And then we could turn the threshold to the right again, or we could change the tone by turning the threshold to the left. Creates more of a fuzzy, bitey sound. To make it sound more ethereal, I'll say that it lightens up some of the heavy elements. So that is more of a tone, taste than it is a rule. So this is true soft clipping on the left. To the right is more hard clipping. I kind of like the tone of soft clipping. So let's try that. And then let's go to the soft clipper before. I think Simon Servita showed me this. I never just thought to do it. Is use the post gain from the soft clipper to push into the last soft clipper. Usually I would add an EQ2 in between, but we don't have space here. So I have to rely on the last bit of gain that we have, which is this soft clipper before the last soft clipper. So we're gonna push that last soft clipper until we're hitting 0. So it's showing here that even though we're pushing into the soft clipper, it's not hitting true 0 because the post gain isn't the right amount. So this is why soft clippers are kind of hard to work with, because there's no definitive output gain. We have to eyeball it. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. Make sure we're not going above 0. So now we have the extra loudness coming out this mix here. Now again, this is pushing it extremely hard here. So let's say I think this chain is too aggressive. I can go back to the gain staging stage and pull back the input to dial back some of that saturation. Or I could do the opposite. I could push harder into the chain. So this mix is a very aggressive mix because it's more of the underground sound. But for other genres, it's the same 5 steps. Gain staging, okay, moves into saturation. And then from saturation, we shape the curvature of the sound with the transients shaping. And then from that point, so we have 3 steps so far. We have gain staging, we have the saturation, which adds frequencies to the mix. And then we have the shaping of the transients to add more dynamic back to the mix. The 4th step in that case is the width and the height. And the 5th step is getting stuff loud. So you guys can see that there's a science per one of those steps, but those are the 5 steps to getting your mix to sound professional. So if you guys want to learn more, go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. Peace out, guys.